Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Marina Nicotina. I'm the Senior Trainer Technologist of Lovely brand in the Eyebrows direction. Today, we will talk about the artistic design of eyebrows with the application of Lovely products. As a dye, we will use Lovely's henna to color eyebrows. I'll tell you about the technology of working with this henna, and I'll share my personal tricks and life hacks. Any procedure for eyebrows begins with the preparation of the eyebrows area for coloring. For this, we will use the micellar water from Lovely as a step number 1. It's a wonderful, very mild product that removes even the most persistent makeup. It has a convenient package with a pump. It doesn't require unnecessary movements. You can just take a cotton pad, press gently on the pump, and then you start to clean the eyebrow zone. The next step is to remove the micellar water residues and to end the eyebrow cleansing process. I'll do this with the help of eyebrow cleansing foam. It has a very dense, good texture that doesn't flow, and it has a very light, pleasant aroma. It's very convenient for me to use this foam because it could be applied to a brush, and after that, you could clean the eyebrow area very delicately. In addition to cleansing, the foam moisturizes the eyebrow hairs and it exfoliates very delicately the upper layer of keratinized skin cells. Our model has a good eyebrow texture and almost equal growth of the eyebrow hairs. At the same time, the skin is slightly oily. Therefore, as an additional stage of preparation, I will also use a degreaser from Lovely, the so-called pre-treatment. The pre-treatment from Lovely contains a small percentage of alcohol in order to ensure the removal of fat from the skin. At the same time, it has a sufficiently high content of allantoin, which almost completely neutralizes the negative possible effects of alcohol on the skin and on the eyebrow hair. There is no need to be afraid of this degreaser. It does its job perfectly, while it acts very carefully. Before painting, I recommend you to prepare the preliminary sketch. You can make it with a pencil or with a white contour paste. I advise you to pay attention to the white paste from Lovely. It has a very good soft consistency. It doesn't flow. With the help of this paste, you could paint very fine, thin lines. The sketch will look very clear, and you will be able to make a good graphic coloring. Depending on the type of eyebrows, you could use the consistency you need in order to achieve the desired result. As I said earlier, our model has a good eyebrow texture and approximately equal eyebrow hairs growth over the entire area of the eyebrows. Therefore, it will be good enough for us to have a light, liquid consistency just to emphasize the natural tenderness of eyebrows and not to dark the eyebrow hairs. You could make different consistencies of Lovely henna. The choice will depend on what result you need to get and on the technique in which you will paint eyebrows. Let me show you 3 main consistencies. They depend on the proportion of mixing henna powder and mineral water. The most liquid consistency is obtained when you mix 2 measuring spoons of henna powder with 4 to 5 drops of mineral water. What does the liquid consistency look like? I would compare it with soy sauce. There is a minimum viscosity that you practically do not feel. The composition flows very easily and quickly along the mixing container. The average consistency is slightly thicker. For example, you should add a little more powder. Visually, I would compare the average consistency with olive oil. There's already such a good, dense ductility, but at the same time, the liquid moves quite easily in the mixing cup. I would compare the densest consistency with drinking yogurt. Pay attention to how slowly the composition itself flows along the mixing container. At the same time, when you type it on the brush, a drop does not drip from it. Because henna has a gel consistency, I would recommend you give time for proofing after mixing. Wait for a minute, and after that you will see that it has become a little thicker relative to how you mixed it initially. Now you can add the required number of drops of mineral water. make the desired consistency, and begin to work. First, we put a certain amount of powder into a stirring cup. As a rule, 2 at most 3 measuring spoons of henna and 4 to 5 drops of mineral water will be good enough for such eyebrows. I recommend starting with 3 drops and stirring the henna well. You will get such a dense, viscous consistency, and only when you realize that you have stirred henna to uniformity, there are no visible particles. You can add a couple drops, mix, and, in fact, the composition is ready to work. Due to the gel texture, the composition holds very well on the brush. Take a small amount of the solution on the very tip of the brush and first draw the contours along the contours that you have already marked with paste. I recommend working with the mosaic technique. It is used in order to make the coloring uniform, and so as to not result in such an option when one eyebrow is darker, the other is lighter. It could happen if the master spends a long enough time in the coloring process. What we do, we first paint the lower contour on one eyebrow, then we do the same on the other side. Then we work out the tail and the body of the eyebrow along the upper edge on the left and right. Well, you can change the sequence. It will not change the essence of procedure. Then we start filling it in. It is better to perform light, thin, layer by layer coloring on such a texture. The first layer in this case will always be uniform over the entire area of the eyebrow. You could start from the eyebrow base or from the eyebrow tail. I recommend starting with the tail in order to stabilize the color a little longer, while the base in this case will look a little lighter. We apply a full layer on one eyebrow and then do the same on the other side. Pay attention to how easy and convenient it is to distribute such a gel structure evenly over the entire surface of the eyebrow. I use a brush from Lovely. On the one hand, it is beveled and thin, and on the other hand, it is a shape of a brush. With such a double-sided brush, it is very convenient to make coloring. Without changing the tool, you can distribute henna with one side. With the other side, you could immediately make a small stretch with a brush in the necessary areas. After the first layer dries, we are ready to apply the second layer. The second layer may be slightly denser. For example, you don't need to do a thin stretch, although it is all at your discretion. When applying the second layer, I recommend starting with the tail and slowly moving to the base. We apply henna a little denser in the tail, then a little less in the body of the eyebrows, and just a little bit on the base. Due to this, we will get a very natural gradient. Let's go back a little to the contour. If you want to have clear edges, then pay attention when applying henna along the contour. Hold the brush perpendicular to the skin. With the optimal stuffing of the pile brush, you can create perfect fine lines. So not to waste time in the process of work, during the exposure of the composition in the eyebrows, for example while you are waiting for the applied layers to dry completely, you could take tweezers and make a partial correction. What does partial correction mean? I recommend moving as many eyebrow hairs as possible during the exposure of the formulations. At the same time, don't work close to the edge, because if the composition is not dry there yet, you could lightly lubricate it, and then there will be no such graphicity. If your client has a lot of thin, transparent, fluffy hairs, I recommend using a thread. Lovely has a good, high-quality cotton thread that practically does not fluff. This technique is called triding. With the help of it, you could remove very quickly and effectively such fluffy hairs. In order to remove it, the dried henna, it is necessary to prepare a glass with clean filtered water in advance. Moisten the cotton pad. Note that it shouldn't be very wet. It is good enough to use a wet disc. We apply it first to the eyebrow, give a few seconds for the crust of dried henna to get slightly wet, and then very carefully in the direction from the bottom edge to the top and from the base to the tail, We begin to remove the henna. Do not be alarmed, because in contrast to the dark, dried henna, it will seem to you that there is practically no color left. In fact, this is an optical illusion, and when you have already removed the henna from one and the second eyebrow, you will see that there is also a good shade on the skin and the hairs have acquired the appropriate color. Immediately after removal, the color looks slightly warm, but after complete stabilization of the color, you will see that it will change to a cold shade. While the color is stabilizing, you can finish the correction. Here it is already possible to move close to the edges to the top, to the bottom, to remove all the extra hairs that visually break the smooth line of the eyebrows. As the very final step, I will use cream wax from Lovely. This is a staling tool that allows us to fix the eyebrow hairs in the direction we need in a very cool way. In its composition, cream wax contains shea butter, vitamin E, and coconut oil. These components give the hairs texture, shine, and accordingly, we will not only get a good fixation, but also a beautiful aesthetic appearance. It is quite simple to apply it. Take a brush, bend it slightly so that you can conveniently get the wax out of the package. And here's an important point. We do not immediately apply cream wax to the eyebrows. Apply it first on the back of the palm and give just a few seconds so that the texture becomes softer, transparent from the body heat, and now you can comb the hairs with the brush exactly how you want the styling to look. I have been working with the Lovely brand for a long time, and I can say from my experience that I can choose a unique color for each client, making up the necessary mixes, and I can recommend additional care products. I wish you to work with comfort, with pleasure, and remember that each client is unique and deserves the best.